Wonderful day, wonderful day, wonderful day. This is your neighborhood Sensei Fouché, and I'm telling all of you to stay woke. But never get too tense. And never stress yourself out. Make sure you get the necessary tools. Be prepared. Relax. And always take notes. I want to welcome all of you wonderful people and consistent followers to the conversations and program. It is inspiring to be in a position to share this information that I continue to study and service others in my paying it forward. All of you valuable people that have a high level of honor and self-worth, I respect you, and I thank you for giving me a moment of your listening ear. I purchased and have in silent watch Batman Begins. The Dark Knight Trilogy. I have this upside down. The Dark Knight Trilogy. Christian Bale. This is the superpower of superhero movies, in my opinion. As far as being a man, not some meta superhuman figure, but a man of purpose, a man of honor, a man of deeper inner strength, and the goals of how to achieve that and maintain it for a long, sustainable period of time in many moments. This right here is visual and audio gold. And I encourage anyone to do more than watch this movie. Listen to the depth of the dialogue within this trilogy. Everything that we cover in regards to the power of now is instilled in many segments and principles of that trilogy, as well as the Matrix. But right now I have Batman Begins, you know what I'm saying? Because Batman, as far as Bruce Wayne, was lost. And he had riches. He inherited all this money from his parents passing away or being murdered. And he was still unhappy and incomplete. And he wound up walking the earth as a peasant, having all of this money and people looking for him, and they don't even know where he is. He just drops off the face of the earth and just loses his identity, his world identity, and starts to look for something deeper. And in that search for something deeper, he discovered his purpose. His purpose to service others through valuing his deep respect and honor in his legacy and name passed down from his parents and the relationship that he had in that deep feeling of losing them, but no longer wanting to connect and commit to that pain. He wanted peace past the pain. And once he found that peace past the pain, he identified with the Batman, the egoless figure, the shadow, the submerged. And he rose whenever justice was required. Bruce Wayne mostly lived as Batman and less as Bruce Wayne. Think about it. He preferred, even though he wore the mask in the dark realm, he was the light. But within the masquerade of the day-to-day mainstream, he was somebody else behind the man he really knew he was. Bruce Wayne was his character and Batman was his true self. He was living in the dark, in the disguise, within the mainstream, the so-called daytime, but within the darkness, he was the beacon of light, the truth. And that was his real self. He identified with Batman more than Bruce Wayne. Because in Batman, he discovered his true self. He discovered his purpose. He understood his highest value. And once he understood his highest value, which wasn't that superficial dollar, that's when he understood true power. And all that superficial value was just invested into serving others in the highest of degree of assistance monetarily. And that's why I have this deep, deep, deep connection to the Batman story. Myself was lost. And in losing everything in where I was, I took a chance to go somewhere else that didn't identify with the pain that I continued to cycle in my thoughts. And in discovering a new experience, I started to look deeper within myself and start to have my own validation in my own evolution from the past that I practiced to disconnect from. All the troubles of yesterday, I no longer needed to identify with, because it was like an anchor that I continue to carry around, knowing that it's heavy. And by my choice, I am breaking my back, and I have no use for the anchor, only for the fact that I think that I need to carry it. Like, it has some sense of honor in carrying a burden so heavy that I created and continue to let stack to the point of complete uncomfortableness. And once I finally decided to let that go, I slowly started to breathe. And I slowly started to look deep within my truth and question a lot of my movements and a lot of my processing. And even then, it still wasn't enough to commit to the deepest of a surrender. Because then, moving forward in being in guardianship of others, I start to witness immature young minds following it to a degree of dangerous behavior and thinking. And through my superhero egoic connection still, I am thinking about saving others as opposed to continue high degreeing my knowledge and my connectivity to honoring a deeper connection of truth. Is when I started to really get into a state of astral traveling deeper within and really connecting to an authentic, deeper purpose of honest truth. When I started to see this home go into a state of chaotic living and confused following, and me being blinded into the Superman complex of being the hero and not wanting to be the villain, things started to become even more complacent. And when I decided to not think in terms of hero and villain and purpose and being is when the shift really started to take off into the direction that it needed to be. Now the foundation became so solidified and so entrenched, like the tree roots into the earth, that it became immovable and empowering in its root strength. There is a different level that you must go to completely be in the position of surrender and humbleness. Athletes like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Jerry Rice, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Barry Bonds, and I'm just running off iconic names. I mean, in today's day, I look at guys like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Ja Morant, I mean, LeBron James, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Patrick Mahomes, Saquon Barkley, who just won the Super Bowl with the Eagles. This is a different level of commitment, of surrender towards being. Like, you can't have 1 foot in and 1 foot out and expect to be an expert swimmer. In order to be an expert swimmer, you need to be all in and committed, not only into success eventually, but the many failures that are going to lead to success. But you need to be rooted and committed into your purpose, into your truth, into your highest honor of being. And that is where your true power really starts to enshrine and radiate to the highest of degree. So in that, let's talk about now and go into this power of now. And I hope my monologue connected and made a lot of sense and reference points to where you understood the analogies of what I'm speaking and how that is going to connect into these reading sections. So, if I somehow was misguided, misdirected, or mistaken into my prelude towards this specific main construct, then pardon me for being a little bit misguided or not fully connected into the specifics of how this understanding relates to each other. The meaning of surrender. Acceptance of the now. Question to scholar. If we always accept the way things are, we are not going to make any effort to improve them. It seems to me what progress is all about, both in our personal lives and collectively, is not to accept the limitations of the present, but to strive to go beyond them and create something better. If we hadn't done this, we would still be living in caves. How do you reconcile surrender with changing things and getting things done? So basically they're saying, well, if you're complacent, how does that connect to achievement? But see, that immature thinking isn't deep. And in response, when we read forward, the answer is going to be so simple, because you have to be beyond surface thinking. You need to be in subconscious, submerged, deep within thinking. Or rather processing, because at that point you're so deep that it's a process. It's a consistent thought on top of a thought on top of a thought, which gets deeper, which eat with each thought on top of each other, and that is a process. So in answer, to some people, surrender may have negative connotations, implying defeat, giving up, failing to rise to the challenges of life, becoming lethargic, and so on. True surrender, however, is something entirely different. It does not mean to passively put up with whatever situation you find yourself in and to do nothing about it. Nor does it mean to cease making plans or initiating positive action. Surrender is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to rather than imposing the flow of life. And let's read that over. Surrender is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to rather than opposing the flow of life. So, in explanation, don't fight against what is, know what is, and adapt to what is within accordance of who you be. The only place where you can experience the flow of life is the now. So to surrender is to accept the present moment unconditionally and without reservation. It is to relinquish inner resistance to what is. Inner resistance is to say no to what is through mental judgment and emotional negativity. It becomes particularly pronounced when things go wrong, which means that there is a gap between the demands or rigid expectations of your mind and what is. I always say anything could happen. Nothing surprises me. Expectations always lead to disappointment, because when you set an expectation or a bar extremely high and people don't live up to it, that is a disappointment. That is your setback. And most people won't live up to those expectations to the high level of consistency that you believe that they will. That's immature thinking. That's their conscious con trying to convince you of something unrealistic to continue to use you as a pincushion, as a pain body. If you have lived long enough, you will know that things go wrong quite often. You got to be prepared for any moment. You know what I'm saying? Because if you're not, you always going to be over frustrated, and in long-term misery. Acceptance of what is immediately frees you from mind identification and thus reconnects you with being. Resistance is the mind. And let me go back to my personal situation, and I didn't want to go too deeper into it. But in thinking that things weren't going on that were going on, then I continue to have a complacent attitude and think that I'm more helpful than hurting by not being aware and conscious into the present. And continuously telling myself, nah, this can't be. It can't be. I know it can't be. When deep within, I know that it is. And once I really accepted that it was, went out to expose knowing what was, then I had to accept the visualization and the identification and the exposing of what was. And in knowing what was or what is, then I had to commit into what I needed to be in every moment going forward without having the emotional attachment of love or hate, of good or bad. I just had to be what needed to be, which is the strongest connection of moral understanding and purpose. And in that purpose, it continues to honor, value, and deepen in strength and illumination. Surrender is a purely inner phenomenon. It does not mean that on the outer level you cannot take action and change the situation. In fact, it is not the overall situation that you need to accept when you surrender, but just the tiny segment called the now. Resignation is not surrender. You don't need to accept an undesirable or unpleasant life situation. Again, you just need to recognize it as miserable. Don't try to say or give an excuse about it, about why it is the way that it is. It just is. Recognize it for what it is, not what you think it should be, could be, what you want it to be. Recognize it for what is. And then when you recognize it for what is, then you could truly deal with it for what it is. And if it ain't gonna be, then you have to know to let it go. And then in truth, through the order of process moving forward, you should be able to see if that person makes a promise or a commitment, whether they honor or value that truly. And if they do, then you'll continue to extend rope. And if they don't, then you know for sure immediately upon your uncertainty of the still desire of hope, you'll know for sure that you have to cut that cord. You then narrow your attention down to the present moment without mentally labeling it in any way. This means that there is no judgment of the now. Therefore, there is no resistance, no emotional negativity. You accept the isness of this moment. Then you take action. Non-surrender hardens your psychological form. The more you resist what is, the more you struggle, the more you continue to have intense pain. The shell of the ego, and so creates a strong sense of separateness. You don't feel connected. You feel isolated. You feel like Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway talking to a volleyball for 4 years. But that's not true. You just aren't ready to recognize what is. And you create your own island. There's really no island. You just imagine yourself being on this imaginary island that you created, that a lot of other people have created as well, in this interdependent physical realm, in all of their individualities. The world around you and people in particular come to be perceived as threatening. The unconscious compulsion to destroy others through judgment arises. So then you start talking about other people because you don't want to tell the truth about what you got going on, because it's more comfortable to recognize someone else's pain or misfortune than identify yours, because you don't want to look like the clown, but you really are a clown. And until you identify yourself as a clown, you will not take off the suit or recognize that you look like a clown and that you don't want to be that, and that you need to take off that suit. The unconscious compulsion to destroy others through judgment arises, as does the need to compete and dominate. Even nature becomes your enemy, and your perceptions and interpretations are governed by fear. The mental disease that we call paranoia is only a slightly more acute form of this normal but dysfunctional state of consciousness. Not only, and let me take another sip of water, not only your psychological form, but also your physical form, your body, becomes hard and rigid through resistance. Tension arises in different parts of the body, and the body as a whole contracts. The free flow, you start to close yourself. You don't open yourself to being. You start to close yourself within just living and existing. The free flow of life energy through the body, which is essential for its healthy functioning, is greatly restricted. Body work and certain forms of physical therapy can be helpful in restoring this flow, but unless you practice surrender in your everyday life, those things can only give temporary symptom relief, since the cause, the resistance pattern, has not been dissolved. If you find your life situation unsatisfactory or even intolerable, it is only by surrendering first that you can break the unconscious resistance pattern that perpetuates that situation. Surrender is perfectly compatible with taking no action, initiating change, or achieving goals. But in the surrendered state, a total different energy, a different quality flows into your doing. Surrender reconnects you with the source energy of being. And if your doing is infused with being, it becomes a joyful celebration of life that takes you more deeply into the now. Once you understand what is, even in the course of dealing with what is and correcting what is, your stress in those immediate interactions are minimized. And once you are finished recognizing that moment, you are no longer connected to that continued high level of pain. Even that is minimized more than the minimization in the addressing moment. It is the quality of your consciousness at this moment that is the main determinant of what kind of future you will experience, right? If you're truly in surrender, or if you're truly still in resistance, you know what I'm saying, the future moments forward are going to tell what is going to happen in response. So to surrender is the most important thing that you can do to bring about positive change. Any action you take is secondary. A lot of times you don't even need to do nothing other than know what it is and start processing more than speaking. Only speak when you have to, but don't speak all the time just to be speaking and just berating and beating a point at every single specific moment. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to do that. Focus more on being than talking. No truly positive action can arise out of an unsurrendered state of consciousness. In the state of surrender, you see very clearly what needs to be done, and you take action, doing one thing at a time and focusing on one thing at a time. Baby steps, baby steps, baby steps. You go A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. You don't go A, G, R, or 1, 12, 24, 82. If your overall situation is unsatisfactory or unpleasant, separate out of this instant and surrender to what is. Your state of consciousness then ceases to be controlled by external conditions. You are no longer coming from reaction and resistance. If your boss tells you something that you don't like, you know what I'm saying? Accept what he told you. You don't have to like it, but you have to accept what it is. And then at the next moment, you have to accept whether you're going to follow through or not. And if you don't follow through, you could possibly lose your job or be suspended or be reprimanded again in more severity. But you need to be prepared for that if you make that choice. You know what I'm saying? And then you have to accept that for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Move on from the job and find another job. Be prepared to be fired or suck it up and do in compliance what they asked or required and continue to do that moving forward without argument or resistance, or do that in the moment to not lose that job in that moment and look for something else in the next moments going forward. Focus not on the 100 things that you will or may have to do at some future time, but on the one thing that you can do now. This doesn't mean you should not do any planning. It may well be that planning is the one thing you can do now, but make sure you don't start to run mental movies. Project yourself into the future and so lose the now. I'll start thinking about, well, yeah, in another couple of weeks, I'm going to have a job. There ain't no guarantee. Right now, you got this job. And focus on you being there or not being there. And then if you're not there, then you have to focus on the steps towards looking for another job. You don't know when you're going to get it. You know what I'm saying? But 2 weeks, what are you talking about? Are you saying that you definitely going to leave, or are you just making empty threats? You know what I'm saying? Because if you're making empty threats, be careful what you wish for and what you do, because then you created a cause, and to every cause there will be an effect. So then you created a future that is probably out of your control because you didn't keep the control by being submissive to the moment or passive into your feelings and the requirement into doing. Do not confuse surrender with an attitude of I can't be bothered anymore or I just don't care anymore. If you look at it closely, you will find that such an attitude is tainted with negativity in the form of hidden resentment, and so is not surrender at all, but masked resistance. By witnessing the resistance, you will see that it serves no purpose. By focusing all your attention on the now, the unconscious resistance is made conscious. And that is the end of it. You cannot be conscious and unhappy. Conscious and in negativity. Negativity, unhappiness, or suffering in whatever form means that there is resistance, and resistance is always unconscious. Would you choose unhappiness? If you did not choose it, how did it arise? You know what I'm saying? If you say you ain't mad, then why you mad? You know what I'm saying? If you say you're not unhappy, then why are you expressing all this unhappiness? What is its purpose? Who is keeping it alive? You say that you are conscious of your unhappy feelings, but the truth is that you are identified with them and keep the process alive through compulsive thinking. All that is unconscious. If you were conscious, that is to say totally present in the now, all negativity would dissolve almost instantly. It could not survive in your presence. It can only survive in your absence. You keep your unhappiness alive by giving it time. That is its lifeblood. By continuing to think about the pain, by continuing to think about what you don't want, instead of focusing on what you do want. Remove time through intense present moment awareness and it dies. Until you practice surrender, the spiritual dimension is something you read about, talk about, get excited about. You know what I'm saying? Write books about, think about, believe in, or don't, as the case may be. It makes no difference. Not until you surrender does it become a living reality in your life. Other than that, it's just blah, blah, blah. You know what I'm saying? You talking about you spiritual, but you keep explaining a bunch of problems more than solutions. Or you just talking about it rather than just dealing with it and talking with other people about the happy things outside of that specific bothering topic. When you do, the energy that you emanate and which then runs your life is of a much higher vibrational frequency than the mind energy that still runs our world. Through surrender, spiritual energy comes into this world. It creates no suffering for yourself, for other humans, or any other life form on the planet. Unlike mind energy, it does not pollute the earth, and it is not subject to the law of polarities, which dictates that nothing can exist without its opposite, that there can be no good without bad. Those who run on mind energy, which is still the vast majority, of the earth's population, remain unaware of the existence of spiritual energy. It belongs to a different order of reality and will create a different world when a sufficient number of humans enter the surrendered state and so become totally free of negativity. It is a silent but intense presence that dissolves the unconscious patterns of the mind. They may still remain active for a while, but they won't run your life anymore. The external conditions that were being resisted also tend to shift or dissolve quickly through surrender. It is a powerful transformer of situations and people. If conditions do not shift immediately, your acceptance of the now enables you to rise above them. Either way, you are free. Either way, you are free. Once you surrender and accept what is and commit more into moments as opposed to the past and the future, which hasn't arisen and is only going to be a representation of the misery that you're still in now, the uncontrolled mind state that you're in now, the uncertainty that you are in now, that is going to continue to be your future, is your uncertainty in the now. When you are certain and complete and committed into the now, then your tomorrows will be in commitment and will be complete in every moment to be. Because in now being, you will be. Before you wasn't. And now you choose to be. And when you be, you will continue to be. When you continue to think in the state of being, as opposed to just living and existing. And we're going to hold it down there for the day. You know what I'm saying? And we're still in chapter 10, the meaning of surrender. And our sub-conversation into chapter, it will be tomorrow, surrender in personal relationships. You know what I'm saying? We're going to dig deeper into these intimate relationships. And intimate specifically doesn't mean sex for all of you immature-minded people. Intimate is deeper. It is a close relationship. Someone that you are interrelated with a lot. You live with people. You work with people. You know what I'm saying? And those are the relationships, the deeper definitions within the word of relationship. And tomorrow we're going to commit into understanding the deeper surrender within those relationships. So be prepared. You know what I'm saying? This is your neighborhood sensei Fouché, telling all y'all to stay woke. Relax. Maybe go over to the Round the Clock Thinkers with my man Packboy Dolo. Get some massage therapy after this intense workout. You know what I'm saying? Process the whole conversation into itemized segments. Get all the necessary tools in preparation for that moment. And be aware in taking those notes. Always be smooth. 1.